Are they dogs all from the same house or are they from different people?
No, they're all from the same house.
Oh, okay. So at least they know each other.
No, at least. But like two of them are like giant snouchers, and then there's like a mini snoucher, and then there's like two bassets. So
we roll with it.
Oh.
I feel like we're completely backwards this episode because usually it's your evening and my morning, and now it's your morning and my evening, and we're so like nothing's right.
I'm not a morning person to begin with, and it's a Saturday. Just like usually I sleep in on Saturdays.
Right.
I have my coffee here to wake me up. Not that I think it really does wake me up, but let's pretend it does.
We'll pretend. We'll hope and pray. I'm doing apple cider. Normal spiced apple cider. Every time now. Every time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, just for clarification. So since we are in the weekend, what are your weekend plans?
I'm supposed to have plans for the weekend? My plans for the weekend are to relax. I've had about 2 days where I actually had my normal work hours, and every other day was just taken by meetings, appointments, just not in the house. It was crazy.
Okay, well, I mean, at least, your life was keeps you on your toes, so that's fun.
Yeah, life never slows down. What are you doing this weekend?
I always say as little as possible, and then it ends up not being that way. So it's a long weekend here again. Yesterday was Workers' Day, the 1st of May. I always enjoy long weekends because then I get to sleep in 3 days of the week, except apparently today. Yeah, so yesterday I went to go see a friend who had a new baby, so that was fun. And then today I'm gonna go braai at my sister's place, all the while trying to push in a little bit of writing as well, because next week I have to give my beta readers some of my pages. So I was like, okay, have to like kind of sharpen up the first few chapters before I send it to them. So that is kind of the mission. Whether we'll complete it are two different things.
Hopefully you can complete it.
There we go. Positive thinking. Alrighty. Are we ready for this episode?
We're ready. Let's do it.
Hey ho, let's go. And welcome to Tea and Tales. We are so happy to have you here with us. I'm Madeline Nandal.
And I'm Sarah Sampson. We especially want to thank Johanna and Gaia L. Thompson for joining us and tuning in each week. This week's episode is the long-awaited episode with Blurb review specialist Jessie Cunniffe. And coming on as well is the winner of our drawing, S.L. Darkling. So please welcome Jessie and S.L. Darkling. Welcome, Jessie, back to the podcast. And for the first time, S.L., welcome to the podcast. We are so excited to have you both here today. This is the first time we've done a query review with the actual author online with us.
I mean, it's the first time I've ever done this. I've done live critiques before on podcasts where the author wasn't present. So this is cool. This is kind of like doing a live blurb audit.
I want to introduce you, S.L. Darkling, first. You are a young adult writer. You do a lot of different genres, including horror and sci-fi and fantasy. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into writing.
In college, I just started reading some books, a little bit of Brandon Sanderson, and decided to play hooky from classes and started writing. And that's just kind of been a little bit of a habit ever since.
And Jessie, you've been here before, so give us a little bit of background for those viewers who may be new to the podcast and didn't see you 2 seasons ago. How did you get into doing blurb reviews?
I found myself a little extra time during the pandemic, as we all do. I was a music teacher at the time and always said to myself, I want to do more writing. I'd been a music critic for the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age in Australia for several years by that point, and I thought, I like writing short form. Why don't I write book blurbs? And then my cute hobby swallowed my life and became my full-time income. I didn't realize that blurbs were just this huge pain point, particularly for self-publishing authors, but also anyone who's querying, because essentially the blurb part of a query is just more or less the same as what you would put on the back cover. And now I've written and edited over 1,000 book blurbs, and I have so much fun trying to explain my job to people. It's great.
So we've had you on before, and so if listeners want to go listen to what exactly blurbs are and how you can approach them as an author, then you can go to season 2, episode 5, and then episode 6, where she reviews another author's blurb.
Tell us a little bit about when you're looking at young adult or middle grade book as opposed to an adult book, are there things that you look for that are different?
In terms of the blurb, that it's essentially helping whoever you're querying, whether it's an agent or a publisher, place your book on a shelf. One of the first things that I notice in YA blurbs is the vocabulary. So often we'll have a more sophisticated or adult vocabulary in books for an older audience. Now, that's not to say we're dumbing down our blurb, but often we'll see things like the character's age, which is often less relevant to older readers who are kind of like, yeah, I'll read about whoever. It doesn't matter if they're 32 or 45. It's all more or less the same by that point. But when you're 16, you'd like to know whether your protagonist is going to be a very uncool 9-year-old, or if you're reading about a cool 18-year-old who's got a sword and, you know, can go off to battle or whatever else it is. So sometimes we see things like character age. We have obviously an age-appropriate vocabulary that should be matching the manuscript. And to be honest, if the blurb is done right and it's focusing on the key elements of the book, very often the plot itself will actually just highlight the age group that we're in, because the things that are important in YA fiction are not necessarily going to be the most angsty or involving conflict for an adult. Like, an adult might read this and go, yeah, I can see this is clearly a coming of age journey. Or if it's teenage romance, you know, it's kind of like, oh yeah, this is very high school rather than, you know, new adult, right? Moving through into a higher age group. So they're kind of the main things. Other than that, I mean, I always say with blurb writing, you always come back to the same principles regardless of the genre. It's we want it to be clear, we want it to be accurate, and we obviously want it to be engaging for readers specifically of that age group. To be honest, you're not querying teenagers for your YA books. Adults are going to be reading this.
Awesome. Well, time is to you, Jessie and SL, for talking about his query.
If you guys have questions at any point in time, I know you both write, then please jump in. If something doesn't make sense or whatever else, I love to be questioned on the creative choices I'm making in blurbs. I assume there is a video version of this somewhere, but podcasts are an audio medium, so I thought I might read out the blurb in full so we can kind of all experience the blurb as it is, and then I'll chat through kind of some of my observations, and then I will ask SL a ton of questions about his plot so that we can make sure that this is as accurate as possible and start making some changes. Okay, here we go. Talus needed to apologize to his father, but being wrongfully incarcerated far away in a worker camp complicated things. Unfortunately, no one listened to his plea of innocence. That left him with only one way home: harvest enough yoil to earn a promotion from the same omniscient king that sent him to prison in the first place. Promotions were typically only a matter of hard labor and years of work, but most inmates weren't accused of murder. With the truth of his younger siblings' deaths festering in him, Talus harvests as much oil as possible, but catastrophe strikes. Magic-wielding raiders invade the camp, destroy the oil harvest, and slay any who stand in their way. Talus, a boy among men, must decide if he will risk displeasing the king by teaching the camp his outlawed combat skills, or allow them to die, knowing that he could have saved them. Amazing. Lots of great things in here. It's a really nice length. It's bang on 150, which is lovely. What I'm aiming for with YA is somewhere in the vicinity of 100 to 160 words. With fantasy, and this is sci-fi fantasy, sometimes that goes up to the 180 word mark, but certainly for a younger audience, I do try to keep things towards 150 word marks. I really enjoy the setup as well. I feel like I understand really clearly the obstacles that are in the main character's way. I have a couple of questions about whether the pacing is accurate for this blurb. And so one of the things that we run into with book blurbs is that readers don't consciously know this, but because this is what most book blurbs do, they're unconsciously expecting it. And what they're expecting is the blurb to introduce them to the first no more than 25% of the book. And then they're expecting lots of other action to happen after that. And what that means is if any of this action is further than 25% into the book, we've skewed their expectations from the start. Potentially, you could get readers who are disgruntled because the book is not what they thought it would be. If we're annoyed that we didn't get what we wanted, we're not really in a position to be pleased that it was just something completely unexpected. My blurb instincts are telling me a lot of this last paragraph is midpoint and onwards action. Is that correct, or does it happen in the first 25%?
The part with the raiders does happen. It's about a 50 chapter book within the first 15 chapters.
So ideally we want to keep things within around about chapter 12 if we can. What about, so we find out all of this about like invading the camp, destroying the harvest. That's all in about chapter 15?
Yeah, roughly. I don't have the exact chapter, but it is around there. It could be a little bit earlier.
The risk of displeasing the king by teaching the camp his outlawed combat skills, is that also around about the same point in the plot, or is that something that he has to weigh up later?
That is also around the same point in the book. book. There's a few different setup things where he gets in fights. This rolls in very quickly right after the first incident with the invaders.
So my expectation of this book so far is that he's going to spend the book trying to figure out how to get out of this worker camp. And my guess is from this blurb that he does. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that might be a little bit spoiler.
I'm just trying to get a broad picture of his arc, what journey we're kind of going on here. Most of the book is in the worker camp, correct?
Correct. The entirety of the book is in the worker camp, really.
Great. That is what I would expect. Is his biggest obstacle to getting out of the worker camp the fact that he can now no longer harvest enough oil to get a promotion? Is that the main problem, or is there something bigger?
Yeah, I would say there's something bigger than that. There is a strike system on his flight over. He gets into a scuffle with a gang in which a gang member tries to kill the boy Talus, and a guard ejects that gang member from the transport. But Talus is then blamed for that. And so his strike gets right to the end. That's out of 10. He gets 7 for a murder. I'd say after the point in the book where, he's training people how to fight, the rest of the book is essentially how he gets his last 3 strikes and how things progress from there. So I would say that it's not necessarily a story about how he necessarily triumphs, but how everything is pitted against him all the way to the end. Friends that he loses along the way, kind of a thing.
So he has 7 strikes against him when he's incarcerated. Is that correct?
He's incarcerated. The incident happens with the gang members. And then when he gets to the worker camp, that's when he immediately has the 7. And it should feel very unfair at that point.
I do really like, by the way, how you've dropped the murder here. It's like a mic drop moment. I think we can make it hit even a little harder. Like the fact that most of the inmates aren't accused of something this serious, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so his chances of getting out are much lower than everybody else, which is good. That's something we need to understand right off the bat. Let's get into some simpler stuff and tidy up the setup just a little bit, because I like this setup a lot. But the first thing that I noticed was that we're in past tense. Is your manuscript in past tense?
I believe so.
Yeah. So the funny thing about, the only reason I ask, because I don't care what your manuscript in, it's fine, is that blurbs are always in present tense. There is a very small exception for memoir blurbs. That's a whole other podcast episode. So if you're a memoir writer and you want to know more, just DM me on Instagram. And the reason for this is that when the blurb is in present tense, it feels like the story is happening now. We're creating this illusion of time that the book has been written. The story is over, right? It's there for them to consume at any time. But what we want to achieve with the book blurb is this feeling that the story is happening now and we can step in at any time. And when we use past tense, it does a couple of things. Firstly, this beginning part, Talus needed to apologize to his father, is ambiguous time-wise, because my first thought is, did he need to apologize to him since he was a little kid? Does he need to apologize to him just today? There's this nebulousness that happens, but also it has less immediacy. When we swap that to present tense and we say Talus needs to apologize to his father, there is this immediacy and this urgency that we cannot get from past tense. And similarly, but being wrongfully incarcerated far away in a worker camp complicated things. There's the insinuation there that potentially maybe it's not complicated anymore. It was complicated, but it might not be now, which is not true for this, right? It is complicating things right now in this moment as we discover this story. So switching this to present tense is kind of my first point of call, because that is going to make our story feel a lot more immediate. I think we do get into present tense here. Actually, even here, harvest as much oil as possible, catastrophe strikes. So this whole paragraph feels a lot more immediate and exciting to me than the setup, because it's happening now. One other thing I'm curious about is, how important is this apology? Because we hear it in the first sentence and then we don't hear anything else about it again. Is this a recurring thing in the story, or were you just using it as a lead in to the inconvenience of him being incarcerated?
It is a major motivation for him, because in the first chapter, his father's store is being robbed. His father tells him not to intervene, but he believes he can stop it. He tries to stop the theft, but ultimately he gets beaten up, but as a result gets thrown in prison. So there's that, but then his 2 younger siblings did die underneath his responsibility. And it is kind of a reveal later in the book exactly what happened.
Okay. But we see the robbery happening on page at the beginning of the book?
Chapter 1, yes.
Cool. Whereas the siblings, I'm assuming that's backstory.
It is. You're right.
Yeah. Okay, cool. What I'm wondering is, because the thing is, the apology could be so many things. You could apologize because you forgot to say bye to him in the morning. You could apologize for something more serious like you're talking about. Would you be open to potentially talk about why he needs to apologize? Like, I'm thinking of opening with something more like that it's his fault that his father's store got robbed, and but then it also got him thrown into prisons. How long ago did that happen, the sibling thing?
In this world, it happened 3 years ago.
Why does he need to apologize now? Why is it no longer okay to lie about it?
Because when he attempts to stop the burglary, he feels that this is his chance to prove that he's gotten better and he can stop something like this from happening.
Okay.
But then fails miserably and realizes, I just need to come clean.
I think that this lie that sat on his chest for 3 years, I think we need to mention that in the blurb, because it gives us an idea of the kind of character growth we're going to see, because we know that that's going to come back at some point in the story. It also kind of shows us he's already growing. Like at the beginning of this story, there's already some growth there of wanting to come clean.
Question though about
Go for it.
blurb in general. So you say that the blurbs should basically be about your inciting incident, which is basically about 25% into your book. So when you talk about like him having to apologize to his father, which is at the beginning of the book, but you don't want to talk about the rest of the book, like why do you kind of then need to bring in the apology again? Because then that will kind of defeat the purpose of not talking about the end. If maybe in the end he apologizes to his father. I don't know if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. It's something that is grappled with frequently. What I am aiming to do here is once we rework this setup and we have more context for the apology. So we have the context of him having lied for 3 years, because that's already different. He's lied for 3 years and now wants to change, but before he can apologize, he's chucked in jail because he's made everything worse. What I would be looking to, like a little thread I'd be looking to pull on at the end, is there's something about honesty or something about, being brave enough to let the truth out, except not that trite. Do you know what I mean? So just a little thread, like we're not going to go in and say, and then he finally gets out of prison and apologizes to his father. We can't say that. I don't even know if that happens. But like what we do want to get is like we're setting up this little theme because it's to do with the character's growth. And just reminding people of it at the end is like, well, this is going to be a story that's going through the book. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we don't say it explicitly. I think the tricky thing is because so many people have come to blurbs from thinking synopsis first, we sort of logically think that as the blurb progresses, we need to give them more and more information in the book. And actually, no, you sort of need to double down on what we've set up at the beginning and give people a hint of where we're going, but we're not actually giving them any more information. So I'm still trying to decide whether I want this in here, to be honest with you. Like the magic wielding raiders invading the camp. I wonder if we should be a little more coy about that. We will get there in a sec. So I want to rework this setup with the secret, the 3 years, the robbery, because this is all happening on page and it's all connected to him being wrongfully incarcerated. Because the other problem with having this the way that it is we don't know when he was wrongfully incarcerated. It could have happened off page. It could be a prologue. He could have been there for a decade. Setups are a little bit annoying in the sense that they're the most information heavy generally. Once we get the setup and we can picture where the character is at the very start of the story and the first obstacle that's in their way, i.e. the inciting incident, then things get a lot easier. When he's incarcerated, like is it a life sentence? Like is that what he's looking at?
Yes.
Okay. I just realized we should probably put that in there. How old is Talus?
16.
I wonder if we should, I mentioned this before, age is like a big thing with like kids and teenagers. I wonder if we say up to 16-year-old Talus, who is it who comes to incarcerate him? Is there like a body, a council, like in your world, what is that?
Police.
Okay. I'm concerned that won't sound fantasy enough without more context. Could we say, maybe we just say, life sentence for knocking someone unconscious is really, that seems intense. Is that normal in that world?
It is.
We could even just say, we don't even need to say imprisonment. It's pretty obvious what it is. We can say for life. How do you feel about that opening sentence, by the way? I just like to get a temperature check. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's good.
Great. And then it's on the way to the worker camp that then the quote unquote murder happens. I'm just trying to address any like reader, because readers might go, why is he given like a life sentence for knocking a guy unconscious like that? That's not good, obviously. If we say something like his pleas of innocence fall on strangely deaf ears, is that too spoilery for you? Like, does he think something sus is going on?
Yeah, he thinks he's innocent. And he doesn't understand why he's incarcerated for that.
I don't want to get into the weeds of being like, I'm a gang member, blah, 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 blah. But I wonder if I want to make it clear that he has to also foot the bill for someone else's mistake. And so by the time he gets to the camp, he's like even worse off than when he started.
What if it says something about, and the guards seem to be out for him or something? Because you said the guard is the one that kills the inmate, but he gets the blame.
Or it's kind of like they make him a scapegoat, but I don't know that I necessarily want to hit that word for YA. I'm not, they wouldn't know it, but it's a bit wordy. These pleas of innocence fall on strangely deaf ears, and the guards are quick to add another crime to his record: murder.
That's nice.
This is good because we've already said a lot of this nice and quickly. I think we need to get into what is Yoil.
It's not like a super fancy thing. I was like, well, it's magic. It's not oil, but it's yellow, so I'll call it yellow oil or Yoil.
Okay.
So it is
cool.
it is
Love
the
it.
magic substance in the world.
We next need to get into the Yoil, and I'm still thinking about the secret, the lie. I'm still thinking about whether that fits in. Let's just see if this works. Harvest enough Yoil. Now Talus's only ticket to freedom is to harvest enough Yoil to earn a promotion from the same omniscient king that sent him to prison in the first place. Do we need the word omniscient in the interests of being straight to the point?
I was literally going to ask that question. I was like, isn't that a big word for young adults?
Well, like, again, I'm not saying they wouldn't know it, but I think in a blurb where, remember, the attention span is lower in a blurb, like investment is less. So while they may quite happily read that in context in a manuscript, in a blurb, I think it could be a stumbling point.
Yeah, I think it was only there to highlight the fishiness of, oh, it's an omniscient king, so why is he sending Tal? So, but like, I wasn't,
Gotcha.
I don't care one way or the other.
It's kind of like you're trying to get across that feel of like the king is always watching. I think that's probably too much nuance for a blurb, interestingly, at least for YA as well. Like a lot of people, it's just kind of going to go over their head. I think the main thing is like, okay, we know it's the same king that sent him to prison, so that person's not going to be very sympathetic to letting him out because he's the one who wanted him in prison anyway. Okay, so I want to make it clear that then I've put the murder higher up, which means something like, good behavior record is already ruined, basically.
Maybe just go into the a task made impossible when your record's in shambles or something. Like, maybe not shambles, but
should it be like near impossible? Because it's never about him just going, well, I can never do this, otherwise he wouldn't bother trying. So if we say a task made near impossible, should we say like the 7 strikes against his name? Is that too weird without further context? We all know what strikes are. What do you think, SL?
I think it fits there. It's certainly accurate.
What I like about this is that we have the first obstacle is, well, his record is screwed. So it's not even straightforward for him to follow the path that everyone else can. And then magic-wielding raiders invade the camp, destroy the Yoil harvest, and slay any who stand in their way. That's like, well, there goes the Yoil. So what's the next thing? What I don't quite understand as a reader is, why would the next logical step be for him to teach the camp his outlawed combat skills? Like, is he just kind of like, well, at least I can save these people? Is that the thinking behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. In his mind, it's similar to how he lost his younger siblings.
I haven't forgotten about the siblings. I'm going to write it without them first, and then we're going to see whether it makes sense to put them in. I'm going to say when magic-wielding raiders invade the camp... Wait, just want to say destroy the Yoil harvest. We don't need to invade the camp. When magic-wielding raiders destroy the Yoil harvest... So is this kind of like, sort of a little bit him just kind of going, right, well, that's my path to promotion gone, so I may as well do as much good as I can here. Is that the motivation?
In his mind, it's along the lines of, well, I still have to get the promotion to do what I want to do. And if the only way to do that is to protect the camp, then that's what I have to do.
Okay.
Is there pressure for them? Like, does it destroy all the Yoil, or is there pressure for them to save something?
Yeah, so the harvesting can continue to happen. It's just everything that they've stockpiled to ship out is destroyed. So they can harvest more and try again. But the worry is that there'll be reoccurring raids.
Could we say the stockpiled Yoil then? Because I think that's going to be clearer. Or the Yoil stockpile. Does it matter? Or the camps. Okay, so if we said when magic-wielding raiders destroy the camp's Yoil stockpile, Talus clings... I'm just playing around with this. Now I've got camp again, so ignore me there. But Talus clings to the last thing he can protect. Is that the feeling? Have I judged that right?
I think that sounds to me like he doesn't think that he can still achieve his goal, but he does. But in order to do that, he has to protect the camp. But maybe I'm splitting hairs.
Oh, No, maybe that's what we're missing. Is that because I forgot that you said that the raiders kill anyone who stand in their way. So if they're afraid of future raids, and he's like, if they kill us all, we can't harvest the oil anyway, and my plan's gone. Is that more the line of thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe we need to spell it out for them with like fears of a future raid. Talos focuses on like, protecting the inmates so they can do another harvest. Would that be about right? That's a bit clunky, but
Is accurate, yeah.
I don't feel that the stakes are really like just about him, like this, knowing that he could have saved his inmates. I feel like that's not the center of the stakes. It's part of them. Like, he obviously doesn't want all of his inmates to die, but the real thing he really wants is getting to freedom. Correct?
That's correct.
We have two types of stakes in book blurbs. We've got emotional stakes, which are like internal stakes, and we have what I call concrete stakes, which are the external stakes. Whichever of those images, relates better for you. Some books are very external stakes focused, some are very internal, but there's always both. There is always, even if it's like full on romance and it seems like it's all internal and just hearts, there's always something that is externally impacted by the choices of the characters. What we need to do though is make sure that they're in balance. And what very often happens in blurbs is that we have to prioritize the concrete or external stakes. It sounds counterintuitive, but external stakes are actually what readers connect with the fastest, because emotion requires us on some level to care about the character and the journey that they've been on, and there's no way we can do that journey justice in a blurb. We can show them a little bit of it, and we can get them a little bit involved in the character's emotions, but what we are most often wanting to show them is the external like consequences and things that they're up against, which means that sometimes we end up leaving out internal stakes that are really important in the book, but actually get in the way of understanding the plot and being invited into the story in the blurb. So that's kind of what I'm trying to balance here, is if we get bogged down in the lie, are we going to lose the clarity of the plot? My feeling is that we don't need it in the blurb, but I'm really open to trying to incorporate it if SL, like if you feel really strongly it needs to be in there. So I'm really curious, how is this blurb feeling at the moment? Do you feel it's missing that or anything?
I'm feeling fairly positive about it, especially with what you just described about, people will latch on to the hard truth of the story, the plot of it, rather than emotions that they can't connect to very quickly. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Okay. Madeline, Sarah, how are you guys feeling about it? Do you have any comments? I'm curious.
I almost feel like I felt fulfilled. I almost feel like you could end like right there. Do we need another reason?
I think we need to remind them that like it's his ticket to freedom. It's like the Survive Another Harvest, we're kind of like, oh, that sounds important. I'm assuming when I'm writing a book blurb that my audience is bored, that I have to work really hard to keep their attention. And when you've got them in a book, they've handed over money, they might have read a few chapters, they're like, right, sunken cost fallacy, I'm going to plow through, right? At least for a bit. But you don't have any of that luxury in a book blurb. If it's boring, they scroll onto the next thing, they walk onto the next shelf, right? And it's a lot of it falls on this first part, but we want to make sure that at no point are they having to backtrack to remind themselves. If I was just giving that elevator pitch, that is where I would end. I'm actually wondering whether I'm overcomplicating things and whether we just end with, because every harvest brings him closer to freedom.
So I actually had a thought just now. So because you talked about the 7 strikes, what if you end the blurb with, but he doesn't want to get to strike 10 or something like that?
Oh, maybe it's like so long as should we say he doesn't get to 10 strikes, or so long as he doesn't get another 3 strikes? I'm worried. Is that going to sound clunky? So we could say, because if he can avoid, maybe it's like the deadly, 10.
Deadly 10th strike.
Yeah, I like that. And we already have the uncomfortable feeling that he's being given more strikes than he deserves. What if we said already against his name? Task made near impossible, but 7 strikes already against his name, because it has that feeling of he's only just started and he's so far behind everyone else. How is it feeling to you, SL?
Feeling really good. I like the ominous nature that it's ending in.
Can I brag a little bit? We got it down to 127 words. I'm all right with that. I will say we're about to add a few more because we don't have a hook. And I can't guarantee you we're going to get a hook on this call, because frankly, this is where I like go for a walk, do the dishes, let over in my head. Like, hooks are not something that necessarily just, look, sometimes they drop out of the sky and that's really great. So let's just see what happens. I usually have it in bold and italics. The hook's only job here is to get us to keep reading, to go like, okay, cool, need the next bit. Usually gives us a little hint of genre, little hint of atmosphere, but we don't get into specifics like names, places, etc., etc. The problem is hooks are extremely creatively free, which is why that was all I just said about hooks. It's like, that's about it. They're usually 5 to 15 words max. I like to stay under 12 if I can. It needs to be snappy and it needs to be interesting. But let me think about what it is we might want to highlight.
So just a sideline for our listeners, like a hook isn't always necessary, correct?
No, so a hook is always necessary. There's no law against not having a hook. But newspapers don't publish articles without headlines because they know that no one will click on them.
Mm.
This is the headline of your blurb. And on Amazon, particularly on desktop, all they will see is your hook and maybe the first bit of the first sentence, depending on kind of what their browser's like and all the rest of it. So we want to actually make them feel oriented within the story as fast as possible, excited to read more, because this, while it's hooky and while it's interesting, if we can have them excited even before they read that, they're going to receive this even better. So I never ever write a blurb for my clients without a hook.
Does the hook have to be like a single set apart line, or could it be like a first line of the blurb that's just really catchy?
I like it to be single and set apart for a couple of reasons. There is, particularly if you're putting this on the physical back cover, I will say a lot of trad publishers are lazy and don't do hooks. I'm just going to say it, right? But like that's not good enough for me. The ones that do, the hook is formatted differently. And what you'll sometimes get, particularly in the physical editions, is that people might skip over the hook and just start reading from paragraph 1. So we want the hook to work independently of the blurb, but it should get us doubly excited to read the blurb if people read that first.
Yeah, I'm asking that because taking classes for query blurbs, they very often say leave the hook off, jump right into the story.
Okay,
and so that's why I'm asking if it could be a first line that's just exceptionally catchy that makes you want to keep reading the blurb.
That's a good point. I've always written hooks for my querying authors, but I don't know if they used them, in all fairness. So they may have left them off. You can leave it out for a query. I'll allow that. Does Tellus have a fantasy or sci-fi title that we conclude, by which I mean, like, does he have a job or something that like clearly labels him as like fantasy? So if we said after 16-year-old something Tellus, that could get the genre signal in there a little earlier. That would be my first protocol.
He does not. This place being robbed is his father's store, and he helps his father at his store. So it's just, it doesn't really have a title.
Yeah. The other thing is, like, it's not high fantasy, is it? Like,
No.
We're not. So for me, like, it's sitting very much sci-fi fantasy, and even in that first sentence, to me, like, carted off to a worker camp, like I'm instantly in a different world. I'm trying to think if there's a way we can get, like, usually I would get, I guess, another genre signal in a hook up the top. That is usually what I would be aiming to do here.
So for the hook, because I know it ends with or close to the end of the blurb, it talks about like him protecting inmates, maybe connected to he thought he was protecting his father's store, but he ended up having to protect himself or something like that.
Yeah, that's more along the lines. I'm just wondering if we can do something that would give us a heads up of the genre.
Maybe something like when you have to harvest magic, you have to find workers. Something
That's
like that.
like more along the lines. I think that doesn't quite like say much. We want something that still says something, gets us excited. But yeah, like that would be a good way to get in the magic aspect. Although, how do you feel about magic as a keyword, S.L? Because it's not, I guess it's more fantasy leaning than sci-fi. What's your like preference?
They would treat the magic as a science, but to us it would be magic, and then there's more magic to be discovered.
Usually when I'm thinking about a hook, I'm kind of looking at like what element is it that we want to pull out and highlight to people up front. Could even be something like, I was thinking about something about like, toil only gets you freedom if your, record is clear. Something like that. If we sort of leaned into that more, that's a very prison-y kind of, but also toil is a more fantasy-esque kind of word in this particular context. We could also lean into like something like the king sees all and blah 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 blah. Like that would also lean more heavily fantasy.
In this world, there are cameras everywhere. The title is The King's Justice.
This is probably what I would do for a physical back cover. I'm not saying I would necessarily do it for the query. Like I say, I've written hooks like this for querying authors, and I don't know if they've used them or not. I know they got partial and full requests afterwards, but I stupidly didn't ask to see the query letter. This would be an interesting lead in because, again, it's a little bit of a Big Brother vibe, but also fantasy. And when it sort of changes how we receive this sentence, because it's kind of like, oh, the king noticed that. Do you know what I mean? Like it sets up this watching eye over the top of the blurb. Like I say, defer to querying experts in terms of whether you should add that style of hook. But that is personally what I think I would do for the online description and the back cover. Because this is, to me, I'm curious to know how you guys feel, but to me this instantly says fantasy, but it's also a bit creepy.
I actually really like that. It flows and would feel natural in a regular query letter, which is what we write a lot.
Yeah, like I say, like some of the best hooks are just, they're really short and really simple. Like you could really, there are so many ways you could go with this. Another thing that I do sometimes with hooks is just see if there's a quote from the manuscript that works. Like that can also give us a nice little insight. We can tweak it and make the hook. But I do think that this concept, particularly because we took out Omniscient King from the blurb, I think this is a nice little sort of clarification. How are you feeling about it?
I think it's really good. I do think it highlights the dystopian nature of it. And I know earlier you said it has a hint of that. And I feel like this helps the reader realize that this is the world that they're stepping into.
Yeah, to me, it has like a bit of desolation to it. You know, like the worker camp doesn't sound like the most fun place. And then harvesting is hard work. It's kind of, got this dry harshness to it, I feel, somehow. I feel like it's giving all the right genre signals. We got some good keywords in there. And the stakes for me are what has really kind of turned this around, because reading the original blurb ending on like, suddenly he sort of really cares about everyone in the camp and he doesn't want to be haunted by them all dying. That didn't quite follow for me, although I'm sure that's true as we go through the manuscript, right? Because we get to see those relationships build and him get emotionally invested. As readers, we can't go on the journey that fast, and it's often the way with blurbs is like we have to take them on the journey a little bit slowly so they can actually process everything and go, right, okay. So it's kind of breadcrumbing this, central plot of him really needing freedom. And no one, like, we haven't got the siblings in there. I feel like it would complicate things unnecessarily to put them in there in the blurb context in terms of him wanting freedom, because nobody wants to be in prison for life. Like we almost don't need to convince people very hard of him wanting to escape. Also, it sounds terrible. It sounds like a really terrible place to be. So, I mean, this is a tricky call. I think it's the right one. And if it feels good to you, SL, I think that's a really good sign. That's my litmus test. Does the author go, yep, this feels like my book?
Yeah, I think it certainly does. And you've shared with us offers a lot of light, because obviously as I was crafting it originally, I was looking at YouTube videos and trying to satisfy answering that internal and external conflict. And now I know that focusing more on that external is better for the blurb. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. We absolutely want some internal, conflict in there as well. Otherwise, it all just kind of falls flat. But I think we get that because we can feel the unfairness here. He's like pleading his innocence. It's the unfairness of him having these 7 strikes. Those internal kind of stakes are still there, the tension and the fear and whatever else. But yeah, we really need to understand the context for us to actually care about the story at all. Like we need to know that he might die. that's kind of what's hanging over it all.
Do you just want to maybe read the entire thing the way you rewrote it?
So we were at 150 words before. This one has ended up at 131, which I'm pretty pleased with. Gives you a bit more room in your query letter. Okay, here we go. The king sees all. After 16-year-old Talus knocks a robber unconscious, he's carted off to a worker camp for life. His pleas of innocence fall on strangely deaf ears, and the guards are quick to add another crime to his record: murder. Now, Talus's only ticket to freedom is to harvest enough yoil to earn a promotion from the same king that sent him to prison in the first place, a task made near impossible by the 7 strikes already against his name. Then, magic-wielding raiders destroy the camp's oil stockpile and slay any who stand in their way. With future raids on the horizon, Talus turns to protecting the inmates so they survive another harvest, because if he can avoid the deadly 10th strike, every harvest brings him closer to freedom. I'm pretty pleased with that.
Very nice, very nice. I just have a small quick question before we end this lovely episode. The way I've always seen blurb versus synopsis is blurb is more character driven, whereas synopsis is more plot driven. Am I incorrect in that train of thought?
I would say yes, but it depends on what definition we're talking about. In my world, a synopsis is a summary of the entire plot. So in a sense, yes, there's a lot of plot in it, but you should have all the character stuff in there as well. The blurb is sales copy. What we are doing is we're trying to get people intrigued enough to read the book. It is not a summary of the entire plot. It is not a summary at all. We are choosing the best and juiciest parts of the beginning of the story, like an appetizer to entice people to want to read more. So that's the difference that I see. And I'll be honest with you, plot doesn't sell books alone. We have to have the specific characters in there. We have to be able to see how they are reacting to things. A really good example would be, I have read blurbs before or like blurb drafts that authors have brought to me, and they haven't put their character's name in. So it'll be like, you know, when a 16-year-old boy knocks a robber unconscious, this happens. And we instantly have like zero connection to who that character is. And it's just all plot and things happening. The fact that we have a name and an age, we have his reactions to things, right? We know his pleas of innocence here. That gives us enough information about the character without going on and on and on about his emotional state and whatever else that we struggle to connect with this early on, that we can see how that character is interacting in that world and how that character is going to make that plot, which may be similar to other plots, right? Because there's only so many plots, make that plot interesting to us in this context.
Okay, so how much percentage-wise would you say a blurb should be about the plot and then about the character?
Depends on the book.
Okay.
It's entirely case by case. It's not, it
Oh.
can't be cookie cutter. You've got some books that are almost entirely character driven. Like I think of a lot of Graham Greene novels. So much is happening between the characters and the growth that they're going on. And those kinds of blurbs, it is tricky because you have to be able to get people to resonate with the characters. And like I say, that internal stuff is it's much harder to get people on board in a short period of time. That those kinds of blurbs might be 70% internal conflict and 30% external, because we also don't want to mislead people, right? Like there's a fair bit of action in your book, SL. Like there's a lot of things that are happening. If nothing happens and it's literally like a character study, we can't be trying to make it all about plot. We have to be making it about the characters. If there's about a 50-50 balance, well, then the blurb should reflect that as well. So the blurb really has to reflect the balance of character driven and plot driven that the book has.
How much of your blurb should, I don't want to say world build because we're not trying to throw a world building scenario into your blurb, but how much, I almost want to say effort, do you need to put into showing the agent if you're querying, or showing your reader when you're using it as a back blurb, what world you are in, versus just, you know, them knowing, okay, this is paranormal or this is a sci-fi, and them knowing they're going to be expecting some kind of world that they're not used to?
Yeah, great question. The amount of world building you need to do is in direct proportion to how much that world impacts the plot. So obviously, if we're querying an agent, and also for readers as well, we do need to make the genre really clear. In fact, that's becoming more and more important with the Amazon A10 updates. They're looking for genre cues, right? So it's always important. But for example, I'm sure that there's a whole ton of laws and bits and pieces of world that SL hasn't told us about, right, in this world, because they do not directly impact our understanding of the core plot as we need to describe it in the blurb. So you may have some really cool type of magic, but if it isn't directly impacting the part of the plot that we need to talk about in the blurb, which is mostly the inciting incident, then it's irrelevant. Genre signals will usually come out clear enough, unless for some reason half your book has like almost no fantasy and then the second half is fantasy. Like that would be a nightmare even for me to blurb. It would be possible, but it'd be annoying. But most of the time, if your story is structured well, if you've done good world building in your manuscript, that should come out kind of organically. And I mean, I think this is what's happening really nicely in this blurb. Like for some sci-fi, for example, the year is incredibly important. We need to know that it's the year 2075, right? Because that impacts how we actually view the world. I spend the entire first paragraph very heavy on the world building, and I hate doing that, but often for high fantasy, it's necessary because otherwise we cannot understand anything else that is going on if we don't understand where we are, what the type of magic is, or sometimes what year it is, or whether we're on Earth, or whether it's a hidden realm on Earth or on a planet. Like sometimes those things, if we don't understand them, the rest of the blurb will make zero sense. And so that is like, we only need to include the information that helps readers make sense of the inciting incident and the bits of plot that we need to get across. Everything else, irrelevant.
Thank you very much for all of your detailed descriptions and all of your detailed information. And S.L. Darkling, thank you for coming and letting us share your work with people as well. We hope to see it on a bookshelf soon. We like to keep things short here on Tea and Tales. Get your fingers back on the keyboard and your pens back on paper.
And if you like what we are doing here, if you love the guests that we have on and the topics that we are discussing, go follow us on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at Tea and Tales Podcast, and on Twitter/X and TikTok at Podcast Details. Then go to that purple icon on your device and go to Spotify and go like and share and comment and tell us how awesome Jessie is and how you are progressing in your blurb for your query. And then you can help us go up with some moment.
And join us next week for tips on falling in love with reading, our last episode of season 4. It's already here. Happy writing.
Bye.